Thanks again, everybody, for joining us for tonight's SHLA session. If you are new to the SHLA program, my name is Annalise. I'm the operator of the whole program. If you're getting emails, you're getting them from me. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to reach out to outreach@swe.org. I'm putting that email in the chat. That's a good place to reach out if you have any questions about the program, SWENext, or any sessions that are coming up, anything like that. And I also want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors for the program year. We have Honda, ExxonMobil, Honeywell, Avnet, the Catherine McQuaid Foundation, and Danaher. And just as a reminder, there will be a Q&A at the end of this session. I recommend if you have questions, like writing them down on a piece of paper, but just kind of like holding them till the end, only because if you put them in the chat too early, it's easier for them to get buried. But we will be having that, so be thinking of questions that you're going to want to ask. And I want to introduce you guys to our speakers for tonight and tonight's session. This session is a leadership skills training, and we are joined by Sydney Newman and Felicia Ma. I'll give a quick introduction to both of them. Sydney is a materials engineer with a degree from Rensselaer. Is that right, Sydney? I'm probably butchering that. No, that's okay. Polytechnic Institute. She's on the SWE Boston Executive Council and a member of the SWE Pre-College Engagement and Support Committee working on SWENext programming. We also have Felicia, who is a senior at Carnegie Mellon University studying materials science and engineering. She's on the SWE Pre-College Engagement and Support Committee and is the vice president of CMU Science Olympiad. So with that, and we're also joined by some SWENext influencers tonight. So very exciting. But with that, I'm going to toss it over to them to get started with the presentation.
Hey, thanks, Annalise. Welcome everyone to STEM Girl Leadership Skills. Tonight we'll be talking about how to run a meeting and how to keep your team engaged, both really important. We'll start off with introductions. We already got a bit of a sneak peek, but my name is Sydney. I got my bachelor's in materials engineering from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. It's a tongue twister. I didn't know how to say it until I toured campus and found out from them. But right now I'm a materials engineer at Raytheon. I'm just north of Boston, and I'm a volunteer for SWE. I'm the treasurer of the SWE Boston section, and I'm a member of the SWENext Programs Committee. I know there's a very long name, but that's just what I call it. And we work on programming for SWENext, which is why we're here with you today. So why are you here learning about leadership skills? It's important to start learning them now, because using those skills, you can solve problems, overcome challenges, and really just start making a positive impact on society, which I'm sure you're already doing since you're part of SHLA. But in general, we do need more women leaders in the world. We need diverse perspectives on teams. That's how innovation happens. And we don't have those diverse perspectives without women and other minorities in leadership. So we do have the SWE leadership competency model. Anything that I've put in yellow is kind of what we're touching on tonight. In the survey after this event, you'll be given the option to suggest a new leadership skill. So start thinking if you've been looking to learn about one, so that you can add that in for us to do next year. Now we have done 2 others of these. If you would like to look at them and listen to the recordings, you can go to the SWENext YouTube, or I've put a QR code with a link to the playlist. I can go back to this at the end if you would like to scan it. But by the end of today, we want you to learn why leadership skills are essential. We want you to be able to run a meeting that benefits everyone. And we also want you to have the ability to keep your team engaged and energized and help them out when those energy levels dip. So now I'll pass it off to Felicia to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Felicia. I'm a senior in material science and engineering at Carnegie Mellon University, and I'll be working at TSMC as a process engineer after graduation. I'm also involved in outreach with high school students outside of class. I joined the SWE Outreach Committee in 2022, and I'm the vice president of CMU Science Olympiad, where we host science competitions for high school students. Now Caitlin will introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Caitlin, and I'm a high school sophomore from Los Angeles, California. I'm a SWENext Influencer, and I'm also the co-captain and a programmer on my all-girls First Tech Challenge or FTC team, Rock and Roll Robots, as well as coaching First Lego League teams who are younger. I also founded Wow That's STEM, which is an initiative in my community that I started in middle school that aims to provide access to STEM for elementary school children. I also do biology research on jellyfish, and I'm the senior patrol leader in my scout troop. And now Joy will be introducing herself.
Hi, I'm Joy. I'm a high school senior located in San Mateo, California. I'm also a SWENext influencer, as well as the president of my SWENext club at high school. I'm also the president of my high school track club, and I was a former research intern at Brooklyn National Lab, and I currently serve as a student member of my school district board as well.
So now we want to learn a little bit about you. I think Annalise should have a Zoom poll. And if you can just answer what grade you're in, and then, so we get a baseline of who we're talking to. Are you or have you been a leader in any club, or have you not been a leader but you want to? All right, seeing a lot of you who have been leaders, a lot of you who haven't been. That's okay, that's why we're here. All right, we have a good mix of everyone. So with that, let's get started.
Okay, so now going into our topic for today, can you give a Zoom reaction? Just raise your hand or any other reaction if you or someone you know has ever complained about having too many meetings.
Yes, that is something that I've heard too. Awesome.
Okay. Thank you to everyone who reacted. And now could you type in the chat, what are some pros and cons of meetings? Yeah, length of time. I feel like if meetings are way too long, they can get pretty boring, but when you get them at just the right length, they can be really effective. Yeah, decision making and then more efficient than chatting. Also having that like face-to-face interaction at meetings can help.
All right, I think you all touched on quite a few of the topics we'll be covering tonight for the portion of our slides on meetings. Right, they can help generate ideas when you're brainstorming. It's a lot more effective to do those in person. It helps with innovation, right? Because as you're brainstorming, you're coming up with new ideas. And then as you're brainstorming and working with all these people, it can help you build relationships with people on your team, or maybe someone who you've never worked with before. And in collaborating with people you don't know, or maybe someone that you've met before, but you haven't met with in a meeting, it can help generate information exchange, which is super important. So if you're two leaders, say you're a leader of a club at one school and you're meeting with a leader of the same club at a different school, you can exchange ideas. How are you gaining new members? What do your events look like? It really enables great collaboration. And if someone has already solved your problem, you can figure that out and not waste all your time reinventing the wheel. Now, these are all really great benefits, but I think a lot of you touched on this. They need to be worthwhile and not a waste of time. I don't know if you've ever been doing homework or studying and you've really gotten in the groove, you kind of zone out, and you don't realize how long you've been working, meetings can interrupt that, which is something called deep work. So you're really deep into your work, you're focused, and when you get interrupted to go to a meeting, it can really decrease your productivity because it takes longer to get back into that deep work mode. Now, how can you host a meeting as a leader that is worthwhile for everyone? You need to be prepared, first and foremost. Now, the first question you should be asking yourself is, why are you having this meeting? Are you making a decision, coming up with solutions? Are you figuring out who's going to do what? If it's none of these, maybe you should rethink and not have a meeting, because you should be accomplishing a goal when you meet. So maybe it can be an email, a quick text, something like that. Now that you know what you want to accomplish at this meeting, you can start making your agenda. Now, when you have an agenda, you can go in with a clear idea of what you're going to do in a certain order so that you can help everyone stay on track. So you want to think about what topics you want to discuss, and then you want to figure out how much time you want to spend on each topic. Is one topic your priority and you want to devote a lot of time to that? Or is something just a quick minute check-in so that everyone's on the same page? Now, you do want everyone to be on the same page and also be prepared. So if there's any like reading or forms that you want everybody to know about, you should send those out before the meeting itself. Okay, now everyone is at your meeting. How do you run it in an effective way? One, you want to set expectations at the start, which you've already gotten yourself prepared for because you have that goal for the meeting and you have your agenda, which will help you keep within scope of what you want to talk about. You can get a lot done when you go on tangents, but tangents can really sidetrack everyone and distract from what you really wanted to have the meeting about. If you do notice a lot of people are interested in a tangent, you can always make note of it and then set up a meeting with those people at a different time so that you can really get to the point and spend time on what you need to spend time on. Something that I do want to recognize is that it's important to create space for people who are typically quiet. So maybe they don't feel comfortable speaking up in meetings, or they just aren't a super extroverted person. You want to maybe set them up, so talk to them about something before the meeting. And then in the meeting, you say, you know what, Caitlin, I think we were talking about this earlier. Like, what were you saying about this? I think you had a great idea. And really getting them in that way, in a way they feel prepared and also comfortable. So we had the meeting, everyone's happy, it wasn't a waste of time. How do you follow up? You want to send out the notes and any actions. So if while you were discussing the meeting, a task came up that you assigned to someone, you want to make sure they know that that task is assigned to them, and follow up with anyone if someone missed the meeting or if you needed more information on something.
Now that you have a background on how to run an effective meeting, could everyone send a word or a few words that describe an effective meeting in the Zoom chat? Yeah, Isabella says productive, informative communication and transparency. That's very important. To the point and efficient. I think there's kind of a theme here of having meetings not be too long and drawn out, manageable.
So now that you all have summarized what it takes to be to run an effective meeting, I want to introduce Joy, who will share her story about how she used these skills.
Hi everyone. So I mentioned before that I lead in track club as well as SWENext club at my school. So I have a few tips for running your meeting as well as board meetings. So before your meeting, part of the preparation for your upcoming meeting, it should be promoting your club and making sure that people are knowing when the details of your meeting are, as well as planning to attend. So something that I found really helpful with Interact is making sure that I put up flyers around the school. If your school has a bulletin board, whether it's digital or physical, making sure your flyer is up there as well. If your school has morning announcements, making sure that that information is there as well. And just making sure that information about your meeting is easily accessible around your school so members can easily find out the location, time, and what information about their meeting. So interested members can figure out and attend. Something that I've also really found helpful through Interact is having in-person recruiting. So flyers are really helpful, but it doesn't really allow you to personally talk to members and invite them to attend your meeting. So if your school has club fairs or study hall sessions where you're able to go around school and talk to members about your club and your meetings, that would be really helpful. I found that talking to members directly, you're able to answer questions that they have, any concerns that they have, and really connect with them on a personal level so that they're more likely to actually attend your meeting. And through Interact, I found that going around during study hall periods and just talking to people about club and the meetings, I've been able to get over 90 students to attend my first meeting. So it does work. And I also recommend that when you prepare ahead of time, it is really important to have, your slides prepared and the agenda, but there's no need to over practice. So if you have a set of slides, you don't have to memorize every single thing that you're going to say. I found it's actually better to talk, kind of go with the flow and just connect with members as you're leading the meeting. If you're too focused on what exactly you're going to say and focusing on making sure what you're saying is perfect, you might lose out on the attention of the members and you might not be able to interact with them as well because you're focused on what you're actually saying. So no need to over practice as long as you know the general agenda of your meeting. So when you're actually leading the meeting, I think that interaction has really been key to retaining members as well as keeping them attentive on the agenda. So this can look like asking people questions or making sure that everyone is included. So for SWENext, this could look like if you're hosting an engineering-related activity, you can walk around the classroom during the meeting and make sure that everyone knows what the activity is about, or you could highlight someone who is doing an activity really well. And this way, everyone feels like they're a part of the meeting and they feel like they're an active part of the club. And this will foster a sense of community that will keep members continuing to attend your meetings. Board meetings are slightly different because interaction isn't really the goal here as much as getting your action items done. So for board meetings, I recommend preparing a detailed agenda and action items, as well as being confident in your leadership and choices. In general club meetings, interaction is really important because you want people to feel like they're part of the community, but having a bit too much discussion or letting members of during your board meetings get sidetracked isn't really as ideal because it distracts from the action items that you want to get done. So I recommend being confident in leadership and not being afraid to be assertive at times.
Okay, thank you, Joy. And now we'll be transitioning to keeping a team motivated. So everyone please type in the Zoom chat, what is one thing that keeps you motivated when you are working in a team? And this doesn't have to be engineering or STEM related. It could also be sports teams or other groups. Yeah, definitely support, participation, and interaction when everyone hypes each other up.
Yeah, great answers from everyone. So now I'll be talking about why energizing a team is important. When team members are motivated, they work more efficiently and produce better results, and they are more likely to communicate openly and support each other, which increases team morale. They could also be more open to addressing conflict and working together to eliminate obstacles. And since there's more open communication, team members feel more comfortable discussing new ideas that the rest of the team might not agree with, which can boost innovation. Team members are also less prone to stress and exhaustion, and they're more likely to stay engaged and committed to the team's goals when they feel motivated and valued. Next slide, please. So moving on to how you can energize your team. First, you can become familiar with each team member's personality and preferred communication or management style, which allows you to learn how to best approach them and help them reach their full potential. You could include some icebreakers at the beginning of meetings if members are comfortable with that. Leaders can also create an environment where the team is comfortable speaking up, even if they don't agree with the rest of the group. Since people will feel that their ideas are heard if you do that and they're making a difference, they can become more committed. Next, you should ask for feedback from your team members because considering their thoughts and concerns helps them feel valued. And it's also important for you to take action based on the feedback you get from your team members to maintain their trust. Another way you can energize your team is to celebrate milestones and achievements. And one way to do this is to shout out team members at the beginning of meetings or host gatherings to celebrate the completion of a goal. You can also host team building activities to help members get to know each other better. However, you must be considerate of people's schedules as some might be reluctant to take time out of their weekends. So also when team members lose focus, you should remind them of the vision and goals you're striving to achieve, because sometimes it's important to step back from work and look at the big picture in order to get back on track and adjust obstacles. Also, being a positive and optimistic role model can boost energy and set expectations for how the team should conduct themselves. Finally, since the team wants to be recognized for their contributions, you should show gratitude, such as thanking everyone at the end of meetings, and this can help them feel more motivated. So now that you know different ways to energize your team, how do you know when to give them that extra boost? You can tell that team members might be feeling unmotivated if they're quieter than usual or stop contributing ideas. There's a noticeable drop in work quality and the team is not meeting deadlines. They avoid taking on new tasks. There are signs that they are frustrated or they are often late to meetings or absent. If you notice these signs, consider checking in with your team members and finding ways to re-energize them. Now, Caitlin will be sharing her experience with motivating a team.
So I'll begin with my experience as a robotics team co-captain and a club president. I know it can be pretty difficult to keep a large team motivated for a long 7-month season. So one thing I like to do is use milestones and assigning specific tasks to each team member. And this holds each person accountable and also provides a metric of progress that's consistent. So this could be Gantt charts or spreadsheets. You really have to figure out what works best for your situation. And then another thing I do is prepare an agenda and discussion questions before the meetings and send them out to the team, and ask them to prepare short answers to each question. And what this does is it encourages each person, even those who aren't really as inclined or comfortable speaking at first, to participate in the discussion. And this in turn allows us to all connect on a more personal level, because when I know my teammates really well as friends, I can find ways to motivate them in effective ways because everyone really has different needs and motivations. Next, I'll be sharing about my experience as a senior patrol leader in my scout troop. So I make sure to run monthly reflection and feedback sessions, and also after each trip, we go through roses, thorns, and buds. And this allows me to really take the scouts' input so that we're all leading the troop together and it's not really me deciding everything for them. And this, in general, just makes it a better experience for everyone and makes it so that each person is excited to come to our weekly meetings. And then finally, I wanted to share about how these skills carry on even outside of leading a team in high school. I found that they were really, really helpful when I was pitching my Wow That's STEM program to professionals and adults at local libraries and community centers, because I had to prepare an agenda and discussion questions beforehand. And this really helped me give a good first impression for that. And then also keeping the kids engaged during STEM workshops and volunteering throughout the presentation and asking them questions throughout greatly enhance everyone's experience. So in general, these leadership skills of leading a team and leading meetings are not just applicable to those causes.
Great, thank you, Caitlin. That was some great story incorporating both skills. Hopefully, after you've heard Felicia and I's ideas on how to run a meeting and motivate a team, and especially after our SWENext Influencers stories of implementing those skills, you'll recognize why you need to use leadership skills now, how you can run a meeting that benefits everyone, and how you can keep your team engaged and recognize when you need to kind of up your efforts for keeping those levels. And we want to thank you. I believe you can put your questions in the chat or raise your hand and unmute once Annalise asks you to. We have any questions already?
Yeah, I think there is one from Isabella in the chat. Isabella had asked, how do those discussion questions help with overall productivity when there are people who ghost you / don't answer messages? And then she had just added to that, from personal experience, there are multiple members of groups who just don't answer messages but are always at meetings, which that's a good question.
I don't know, Caitlin, you want to talk about this or I can answer it?
Yeah, I can talk about it a little. For discussion questions, usually I ask them at the meeting beforehand. So, for example, my robotics team meets like every 2 or 3 days. I would ask them at the end of a meeting, can you think about this? And then maybe they'll write it down in their notes, and then we talk about it at the next meeting. And that's a good way to reach people in person because they can't really ignore you if they're right in front of you. And then also, if you want like the team members or people who don't answer their messages, maybe just have a chat with them in person and ask them to respond if they're able to, because usually that gets people to really listen.
Nice, that's good advice. Does anybody else, if you have any other questions, you can, like Sydney had said, you can either raise your hand with a emoticon or you can put it in the chat. I have one that I feel like might be good insight that I'm kind of, I guess I'll pose to everyone, like all of Sydney, you and Felicia, and then also the SWENext influencers. Since there were some people in the poll who, I think there were a few people that said they hadn't led a program or like been in like a leadership role before. For like the SWENext influencers, what were some, like when you were in, like put into some of these like leadership positions, were there times that you felt like nervous or just uncomfortable because like that's a new position to be in? And if so, like what were some ways that you tackled some of those like nerves around being in a leadership role for the first time?
Yeah, definitely. I can speak on this. So my first leadership role was towards the end of my sophomore year. And I felt that when I was placed in a leadership role, it was really scary at first because leading meetings, I wasn't too familiar with public speaking at first. And I was also really nervous about raising my voice or telling people to maybe stop talking during the meeting or to pay attention to a speaker that I brought in. And I was really scared of being seen as a bad leader. And I think this held me back from being assertive. And I kind of, for lack of better words, let club members kind of step over me. And I think that something that really helped me was understanding that there is really no perfect way to be a leader. Leadership looks different for everyone and it depends on the situation. So I really recommend just like knowing that in your heart that there's nothing wrong with making mistakes in your leadership journey, and you'll learn from the process and just accepting any challenges that come your way and knowing that you'll come out of it stronger and more confident in your leadership skills.
That's really good advice, Joy. Thanks for sharing. Caitlin, or did any of the other influencers have anything they wanted to add to that?
I just want to say, Joy, I love how you said it's okay to make mistakes. I think especially on teams when the leader admits like, oh, I messed up. We can all learn from this. I respect them a lot more. So that's a great tip.
Cool. If there wasn't anything else to add to that one, I know we have another question from Isabella in the chat. She asked, how do all of you as leaders for multiple programs balance professionalism and I don't know why professionalism, assiduity. I don't know why this word is like tripping me up. With, I can't read today. With kindness and sympathy, without letting people challenge your authority.
I think one helpful thing is, especially if you're leading like a club or a team, telling them about your guidelines beforehand and kind of setting boundaries at the very beginning so that they know what like the atmosphere will be like and kind of the dynamic. But it's also important to have like a personal connection and care for each of your club members or your teammates because I feel like when you have a personal connection with them and you're kind to them, that also helps them generate respect for you and vice versa. So I think they kind of go hand in hand. If you're kind and considerate of everyone, but you also make sure to set boundaries and assign like specific guidelines and deadlines, it should all work out.
I like to add something to that. So if you realize people aren't meeting those deadlines or guidelines, you can reach out to them individually and ask if there's anything you can do to support them and help them meet the deadline.
That's good advice. Thank you both for sharing. Were there any other questions that anybody had that haven't been put in the chat yet? Give you a second if you're thinking or typing. Okay, we have an additional. Oh, Isabel asked if you guys can share your LinkedIn profiles to connect. So up to you guys if you want to share those in the chat. If there aren't any other, oh, we have one more from Harika. She asked, how much time do you usually spend preparing for a meeting?
I haven't hosted a club as a high schooler in a long time. But typically I don't spend too much time preparing. I would say maybe 20, 30 minutes if I'm leading it, just to make sure that I have all my ideas written down. And I make sure I have all the documents that I need. I don't know if Caitlin or Joy, you have any experience you want to touch on?
I think it really depends on the type of meeting and your specific situation. But what I like to do is when I make an agenda for a meeting and think about what I'm going to say, I run through the whole thing in my head and think about like different outcomes that could happen. And when I feel prepared to answer those outcomes, then I think I'm ready to lead the meeting.
Joy, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, it usually takes me around 20 to 30 minutes. And to be honest, most of that time is just preparing the slides, making sure they look nice. But I found that if you come up with your own slide template, it really saves you a lot of time.
That's really good advice, coming up with a template. I feel like that's something that, I don't know. I think about like when I was leading programs and things like in high school and college, like that wasn't always something that I would have thought of. I feel like I would have probably started from scratch each time. But a template does save a lot of time. And I feel like that also helps you kind of keep track of just keep things a little bit like more organized, like you, because you can see what you've done previously, kind of always the topics that need to be touched on. So that's really good advice, Joy. If there aren't any other questions that anyone has, then we might wrap it up a little bit early today. There will be a survey about this session that will be sent out via email, in addition to the survey, there's another survey where just kind of asking about like for SHLA participants, like it's an availability survey basically for like when you are most available to attend SHLA sessions. So I've been saying that link out, but I will include that in the email that I'll send out after this session. So if you could just take a couple minutes to fill out both of those surveys, they're both pretty short, super quick, so shouldn't be a big deal to complete those, be really helpful. If you guys have any questions that pop up, feel free to send them my way and I can pass them over to Sydney and Felicia. And as always, this session is being recorded and it will be available on YouTube probably by the end of the week or like Monday next week. And so feel free to I'll send out the link to the video, but feel free to go view it and, refresh on what was covered today. I'll give another quick shout out to our sponsors. We have Honda, ExxonMobil, Honeywell, Avnet, the Catherine McQuaid Foundation, and Danaher. And I want to give a really big thank you to Sydney, Felicia, Kaylin, and Joy all for joining us tonight and giving us this presentation. I think that we covered a lot of really helpful things. I honestly wish that I would have had something like this when I was leading those groups in high school and college. I think it would have been really helpful to have these tips early on. So thank you to all four of you for joining us tonight. This is a really great session, a lot of really, really good and helpful information. And with that, if there's not anything else that anyone wants to add, I think we are all free to go. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good rest of your night.